Oh, I'm definitely repping big time for both PD, Prismatic Dreams. We go way, way back. And Maximus had a beautiful dream of being that we all collectively under one umbrella, all colors, all races. Yo, Revlon need to owe this kid some money, because this kid had Prismatic way before them. Trust. So we gotta get our attorneys on that. But a beautiful, beautiful thing. A lot of poets who've been writing for a long time know each other through that particular site, Prismatic Dream. And the New World Order, show, it speaks for itself. Y'all understand the New World Order? Well, the New World Order is taking that to a high level. We in a year that can change the whole world. So get out and vote. Get out and take care of your business when it comes to that. But the New World Order, we are leaders, not followers. You gotta maintain, you gotta make sure that the messages that are coming out of our mouth are your positive messages. Let's get away from the BET shake the booty thing. Let's get to it. Let's get hands and not get smart. You know what I'm saying?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Reach Back Interviews. I am your host, Max Parthas. My co-host with me today is Tshombe from Freedom First Cafe. We are interviewing today a phenomenal artist and someone who is making extreme waves in media with something that you ain't never seen before, and you're about to hear about right here today on Reach Back Interviews. His name is Jasiri X, and he is the host of This Week with Jasiri X, which is a weekly presentation on YouTube that takes the national news and turns it into a hip-hop song. So now you want to know what's going on in the world.
Right.
Welcome to the show, my brother Jasiri X. How you doing?
Oh, doing good, brother. And thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to, explain a little further as to what I'm attempting to do.
Absolutely, man. That's one of the things I would love to start it out with. What do you think, Tshombe?
You know what? I think that was actually the top of my list. Aside from asking Jasiri to, for all those who are listening, if you would just, in a nutshell, tell everybody who Jasiri X is.
Wow. A brother, somebody that, of course, an MC. You might say an activist. Entrepreneur. Just. Somebody that's really trying to use the talents and gifts that I have to, uplift the community, shed some light on some issues that are kept in the dark, and just trying to be a positive influence on the world.
We might have to make some new words to describe you, bro. Instead of an activist, you have to make you an actionist.
Right. That's going to be the new term for 09 then, right?
An actionist, that's right. Don't talk about it, be about it.
Right. So I'm going to take that, brother. That's going to be on the album, the actionist.
Yes.
That's the new
all right.
You see the title, the description, how I described him in the announcement I made last week. I described him as hip-hop's anchor man.
Yes, I like that.
the CNN of the hip-hop world, man.
Right, I will definitely take that.
I've seen everything from 1 to 13 now, and the only one I've missed is 3. But you have managed.
Right.
I mean,
3 was taken down for copyright violation. So episode, I can actually send that to you. Episode 3, I used a beat that was pretty new, and it was off of what a lot of people are saying was the album of the year this year, which was Lil Wayne's The Carter 3. So I think because it was such a new beat and it was off of this album that a lot of people are purchasing, they shut that episode down because of that beat. So.
Oh man, haters everywhere, huh?
Right, but it's on the CD. You can get it on the CD, and it will be on the DVD. Best believe that.
Wait a minute. So the beat, and that's interesting how the beat is what defines what the content is. Right.
The beat, was, I guess, what they sent me, YouTube sent me the thing and said basically this was copyrighted material, that beat was copyrighted material, and so because of that, it was kind of a cease and desist in terms of using that beat. And if you heard episode 3, the beat really kind of was guided, even what I was talking about in the type of cadence that I was using. So it was what it was, and like I said, well, I can always put it on a CD, put it on a DVD. But that was one of the reasons why that this season I'm using original beats, and I've got some really, really powerful producers working with me out of Pittsburgh that are providing me some original beats and original content, so that won't have to happen again.
I guess my first question is, and we actually talked about this a little bit, but I'd love for you to share it with our audience, is what initiated the idea of coming out with This Week with Jasiri X?
Well, it was really two things. One, I saw how, hip-hop artists were really, kind of making a name for themselves by, doing, coming out with a new song every week. And the way hip-hop is moving, everything's moving so fast now in this new digital age. I thought about, man, I would like to do something on a weekly basis, but I wanted to do something that had more of I'm a conscious artist. I wanted to do something where I could actually speak upon what was going on. And for me, the thing that kind of crystallized it for me was that in Pittsburgh, we have a radio station that plays all of the right-wing radio shows, whether it be Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, and, they play them back-to-back, and I like to listen to it, one, because I don't listen to, what they call black radio because it's terrible, but I really find it humorous. I mean, I find it very entertaining, some of the things that they were saying, and they were discussing Sarah Palin's daughter's pregnancy and how they were spinning it as to, like, oh, it's a private matter, and, it shows that she's pro-life, and we know that if the situation was reversed, and this is one of Barack's daughters, if she was of age and she was pregnant, and we know it would have totally been reversed. So how they were able to, they spun the news, and this was from the morning radio show all the way down to Rush Limbaugh. They were all saying the same thing. I said, well, man, you know what? I can do that, and I can rap about the news, except I can put my spin on it, and I can present it in a way that, that I feel is the right or correct manner in which, you should really look at the news. And so it was kind of part of a media literacy piece, because the media and the news was so influential, especially kind of dictating as the election season was going on. So it allowed me to kind of participate in that with my own outlook and point of view.
She ain't your average hockey mother. Her shoes cost more than the salary of Joe the plumber. Picture Colin Powell's endorsement. Republicans jumping off ship. McCain's own advisors think he lost it. The Dow's down. It looks like the market is crashing. You hear that loud sound. The whole global economy bombing like wild style. Do you have the financial common sense to save us if your campaign spends $22,000 on makeup and $75 at Neiman Marcus on the wake up, 50 at Saks Fifth Ave, middle class, get your cake up. Just 1 week left. Your campaign needs a shake up. Got your staff saying the big black man carved the face up. Tried to bring race up, but she couldn't act good. Plus the dumb chick carved the B in her face backwards. Failed the polygraph, the police probably laugh. Go back to Texas with your snotty ass and take karate class. For McCain, it's just another black guy. Months after you picked Palin, they still ask why. Troopergate still going on, she just had to testify. If you get stumped by a third grader, you not qualified. In Chicago, it was a double homicide. A little boy was taken, we prayed the police find. So much pain to Miss Hudson and the family. We pray God carries him through the horror of this tragedy. Like that black man in Paris, Texas, how can it be? He's dragged till his body is detached so graphically. So much violence, like it borders on insanity. The youth dying rapidly, living a gangster fantasy. In real life, the bad guy gets arrested. You can ask the real life, he crashed his Corvette quick. A little Boosie, he tried to run as well. The cops wiped him down, took his gun and threw him in his cell. And the BET Awards were born in cell. No wonder Cat Williams quit with no warning and bail. And Lil Wayne had a baby boy in Cincinnati. Just remember, no kisses on the lips from Granddaddy. And John McCain's brother must be real dramatic if he called 911 to complain about traffic. Republicans attacking cause they poll numbers lacking. Now you not an American if you vote Democratic. They say you a socialist if you vote for lower taxes. The fact is they want to silence the voice of the masses. Fascists who don't want you to vote at all. So they slander Acorn with lies and robocalls. Racist protesters at the poll broke the law. If we allow intimidation, this nation is gonna fall. And in Alaska, more charges of corruption. This time about a pipeline that's under construction. How many gaps can one candidate have? Now she's fighting with a staff. I know McCain wish she had another pick in the draft, wish she wasn't so rash. But when you throw that Hail Mary, you don't get another pass. That last week before the election, we in the home stretch. The end of season 1, it's just a few episodes left. Pick for VP was a Hail Mary, but you missed the TD. She's slipping so fast now. Every time they take a poll, more and more people view her unfavorable. Your pick for VP was a Hail Mary, but got INT. And you are watching now, this week with Jasiri Xtra, the most innovative news show on the internet.
A matter of the right place and the right time, huh?
Right. You know, when I never knowing. In fact, if you look at the first episode, I really only touched a little bit on the election. And I never would have thought that the election would have gotten as crazy as it did. Nor did I think the economy was collapsing. And so here I am, every week wrapping the news at a time probably when more people were watching the news than ever in the history of news.
Right.
So it definitely was good timing, you know, in that sense.
Brother Tshombe, your turn?
Yeah. Coming from Freedom Verse Cafe, you know, we promote and deal with spoken word artists all the time. And just about a week ago, we had probably one of the most unprecedented discussions about the conditions of spoken word. And one of the things I mentioned in there is that the words hip-hop, hip is the slang term for being in the know, being current, and knowing what's going on. So I thought it was very interesting that you took the news and did a spin on it, and put it in a hip-hop form, which is, again, being in the know and in the current and in the know, and knowing the truth, and putting it out there for people to absorb it in a way that they are familiar with. We're starting to see this with little comic, like Comedy Central. They have their own news thing, and people are actually watching that more than they are watching other stuff.
Absolutely.
And I find that, and actually CNN is starting to pull up these kind of like cynical hosts that'll put stuff out there in a kind of like a sarcastic way, but it's actually the truth.
Right.
And I thought that was very interesting because we talk about poets having to be messengers, and back in the 60s and in the Black Renaissance era, they were kind of like the news, the anchormen. And so I was, for one, thrown back by that. I really dig the style, and I thought it was very unique. And I was wondering, what was the turning point, aside from what you just said about the news? What made you really, was it the fact that hip-hop was an absorbent, it was kind of like a sponge for, and better for youth to absorb?
Oh, that was definitely a reason. You know, one of the things that I do in Pittsburgh is do work with young people, and I actually have my own business called Lyrics Inc., which is Leading Young Rappers in Career Success is what the acronym, and it really came from me working in the schools, and you know, they would see me in the schools and say, okay, we have all of these, you know, what they consider bad children or students, and of course they're all African American young men. And I would begin to use hip-hop as a way to talk about other larger issues and larger discussions, because hip-hop was the common language between me and them, even though I was a little bit older than them. And so when I would come in and I would rap, and they would automatically, oh, man, he's nice, then we could begin to have a conversation. So part of what we saw, and I'm also part of a group called One Hood, that we started in Pittsburgh to kind of combat all the violence, the inner city violence that's happening in our city. But one of the things that we saw was that the influence of media, the influence of hip-hop, the influence of all these imagery on young people, to the point where I don't think like the larger, especially maybe some older black people really understand how powerful these images and these things are. So we developed a curriculum that we called media literacy. So it was kind of also tied into myself really saying, okay, well, you might not watch CNN or you might not watch, you know, your local news, but here you can watch a 3 to 4 minute video and kind of get updated on not just what's going on in hip hop or entertainment, but what is going on in world issues. You know, this week in the episode that'll be out tomorrow, I talk about what's happening in Gaza, you know, and that's a serious situation. And so if you're not reading the newspaper, if you're not, you know, watching CNN, you might not even know that's happening, you know. So it definitely was an opportunity for me to, you know, just keep young people, and then I think with Barack, you know, or should I say President-elect Obama coming into office, it caused young people to want to know more about the news and more about what's happening in the world. And so I think, once again, that was a good timing as well.
Okay.
I guess it's tag time, huh?
It is.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, for those just tuning in, my name is Max Parthas. I'm sitting here with my co-host today, Tshombe from Freedomverse Cafe, and we are interviewing the phenomenal artist known as Jasiri X, and he is the producer of the famous videos that are out every week called This Week with Jasiri X. If you want to hear more information about either one of us, you can always visit us at either thenewwordorder.com or spokentruthshow.ning.com or jasirix.com. So let me go into my next question. We talked a little bit earlier about a beef that you had, man, and I'd like to, you know, I'd like to touch on that a little bit because I got a few beefs myself. You know, maybe we can share one. But I understand that you were inspired, and not necessarily positively, by Oprah Winfrey. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, that's my beef with Oprah, and you know, and it's kind of a beef not just specifically with Oprah. I think she is the pinnacle of it, but with sort of a lot of elder black people in the community that constantly vilify hip hop, you know, and how, you know, hip hop and how bad it is. All these brothers pull your pants up, blah, 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 you know, and how bad the music is. And, you know, my beef with Oprah was, you know, here you are, you have the ears of and eyes of millions across the country. Oprah says, read this book, and that book is number one. You know, I mean, you got authors, you know, probably stabbed another author over getting in Oprah's book club because it means that you go from maybe sometimes relatively obscurity to number one on the charts. You know, if Oprah has, you know, the latest, you know, you got a movie to promote, a big movie, you go on Oprah. Oprah was one of the first to lend light to Barack Obama, President-elect Barack Obama, that kind of got people on board with him. So when Oprah does a show on hip-hop, she brings on, you know, it's basically focused on quote-unquote gangster rap, and she brings on Russell Simmons, who I didn't think did a very good job of defending, you know, if that's what you could call what he did. You bring on Common, who really doesn't even do what's called gangster rap, but he really didn't do that good of a job. You don't bring on any artist that, I mean, it's you know, it's a lot of Jasiri X's out in this hip hop universe that are conscious artists that we're using our talents and gifts to uplift our community. I can name 10 just here in Pittsburgh. And never once did Oprah say, well, you know what? Instead of you buying and your children buying this negative hip-hop, this hip-hop that promotes misogyny, this hip-hop that promotes gangsterism or whatever you want to call it, criminal behavior, here's an artist, here's a Jasiri X. He doesn't, you know, he's from Chicago. Come on, Oprah, give me some love. You know, he doesn't use profanity. You know, he's using his talents and gifts to help with the image problems that some people face, to help fight against this negative image of hip hop. And in doing that, she could have presented the audience with an alternative, but it was all about how bad hip hop was, how negative hip hop is. She doesn't want Ludacris on her show, even though he's part of the cast of Crash. You know, she doesn't want Ice Cube on the show when Boys in the Hood comes out, you know, because he's this rapper. And so I just thought that was, and so a lot of times when we go and talk to some older black people that, you know, oh, this bad hip-hop, this hip-hop is so terrible, we say, well, okay, well, here's a person that's doing positive hip-hop. Are you going to support them? Are you going to put money behind them? Are you going to put your resources and talents behind them? Oh, no. But yet you want to hold them accountable to a community that's not even supporting them. I don't know how you're going to do that, you know? So, I mean, this is where, remember, when hip-hop was conscious in the early 90s, and my mentor here in Pittsburgh is Paradise, the architect, the grand architect of X-Clan, who's thankfully living here in Pittsburgh and has been a tremendous influence on me in the direction that my music is going. But in the early 90s, when hip-hop was conscious, there was, reverends that were bulldozing CDs in the street, and they didn't get the support. But what had happened was you had people from outside of our community begin to put money and resources behind groups like NWA, which is what Jerry Heller did, and like some of these other groups. And then you saw hip-hop change, and then the broader community gets upset, but you didn't support it when it was conscious, nor do you somebody like an Oprah who could financially back conscious artists, whether they male or female. Don't have to be Jasiri X.
Like you said, just dropping a name is more than enough sometimes.
Right, just her saying, hey, right, she wouldn't even have to do the whole show. Here's a CD. Okay, yeah, I did this show about hip-hop, how bad it is, but if your children are going to listen to hip-hop, they love it, here's a CD that they could purchase and buy that doesn't have profanity, doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. Right in Chicago is a group that I've done shows with called Hip Hop Detox that use hip-hop. They go into the schools, they use hip-hop artists, spoken word artists, singers. I'm talking about young, 15 and 17-year-old talented Chicago artists, but talk about consciousness, and they're right there in Chicago, and they've been trying to get with Oprah for years. But Oprah, and they're right there in Chicago making a difference, been on the television, been on the news, making a difference in the community. And that type of hip-hop, we know mainstream isn't going to cover that, but a lot of times our own people who have this quote-unquote negative view of hip-hop don't even cover it. And the last thing I'll say, this is why I give Michael Baisden a lot of credit for playing the song Free to Gina 6. When you talked about a beef that I had, I thought you was going to talk about Master P. But,
we can get on that one, too.
That came out of the Gina 6 song. But, I had to give Michael Baisden credit, one, for playing it because it was a hip-hop song, and it was pretty, it's a strong, it's an angry song, it's a very emotional song. And but the fact that I didn't have to be a known or named rapper, I didn't have to be that. It was, somebody sent it to him, he liked it, they contacted me, and he was the one that really put me out on a national level with that song Free to Gina 6, and they played it, every day, and I did an intro for his radio show and some other things, but I give him credit that even though he's not what you would necessarily call a hip-hop fan, he recognized that this is a song that could help more young people get involved with this movement, and I don't care whether I know this brother or not, it's good, it's quality, I'm going to put the weight of my show behind it, and that really did, a tremendous amount for my career.
Well, for those
now I'm waiting for Oprah to call, so Oprah, just give me a call, Oprah, he's next, he can be next.
For those that are wondering about Michael Baisden, you can always find him as well as all the artists that are speaking here today on iccolor.com, which is the letter I, C color on .com. And check out Michael Baisden. Listen to his show, man, and send a friend request to Jasiri, myself, and Tshombe over there. As a matter of fact.
Right. My fellow Chicagoan, by the way. You know what I mean?
Right. So let me see if I got this straight. Basically, what you're saying is it's really a case of ignorance, and the glass is half empty concept, where instead of promoting what's positive, she's talking about what's negative and giving that the light that it wants anyway, because any kind of any kind of promotion is good promotion as far as they're concerned. So even if you diss them saying this is terrible, it's still giving them exposure that they want.
Right, because they're like, Oprah represents middle, 50, that's exactly what 50 Cent said, like, well, of course, Oprah's not going to be a fan of me. I represent the hood, I represent the street, I represent, so that just gives them even more light and more attention.
Right, and in the meantime, she's being completely silent about the Jasiri X's of the world, the Tshombe of the world, the Max Parthas of the world.
Right.
So we're getting nothing out of it. So let me say this out loud in case she happens to listen later on. Oprah, if you're listening, you need to call this brother, Get them on the show, let them talk about what's going on, and give hip-hop a better perspective to our kids so they can see something a little bit different that's going on. And if you don't know what's happening in the world, Oprah, I mean, if Barack hasn't called you lately to tell you, then you need to listen to This Week with Jasiri X.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I'm not, this is not a dig at any of her producers, but if I was one of her producers, I would have, you're right, it would have been attacked differently. Vice, even speaking about the negative hip-hop, because speaking about it, you give it existence anyways.
Yes.
I would have literally found, just like she had, comment up there, hey, talk about the stuff that you're doing.
Right.
Talk about the stuff that's going on that we don't hear about so that we can have a better view of what's happening with hip-hop. And maybe if I start talking more about the Talib Kweli's or the Strange Fruit projects and stuff like that, people will know who those people are. Maybe if we start talking about them, because I've watched Oprah talk about what's the gentleman's name, The New Earth. I've seen people really change their entire faith because Oprah backed this book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, change their entire religion because she backed that book. And I think that if we focused more on the things that people are doing, and I think that's why positive people kind of like end up dying out quick because they kind of get smothered out a lot. And I hope this never happens with what you're doing, Jasiri X, or what Max Parthas is doing with Prismatic Dreams, or what I'm doing with The Storm, or anything like that. I hope that people have resilience, and I really push this on to you, brother, is that you maintain that resilience, because even though it may not, a lot of people may not be like, oh, well, Jasiri X's thing is the hottest thing, and I hope they do, really I do, is the hottest thing, that your light ain't shining, because really when Max told me about it, because I thought I'd seen your image somewhere on the internet before, but when Max told me about your work, I'm listening to it, and I was like, wow, this is what it's about. This is that, because people don't sit down and watch it. I thought about the Black in America series, and I thought about the target audience that CNN had for that, and when I thought about it, I said, well, how many black people actually sit down and watch CNN anyways?
Right. And I'm going to tell you, after that, it was a lot of, I guess you would call blogs about how negative it was, how bad it was, it definitely didn't shine the greatest light on blacks in America. And, but I think that one of the last ones written was by a brother who's another good friend of mine named Davey D, who's a hip-hop journalist out of the Bay Area. And he basically was like, look, we could complain about blacks in America, or we could create our own documentaries about our community. And I think that's got to be the attitude that, I could, and, so that was kind of the attitude I took. Well, I could complain about what, a Rush Limbaugh is saying, or what
you could be an action.
A Hannity, a Sean Hannity is saying, and if if you take either of them seriously, I kind of feel bad for you. But or I could create something of my own and put that out and say, okay, well now I'm doing my part. And that, I really felt like even in the victory of President-elect Barack Obama, I felt like I did my part. Like, wow, I did. I had some, I guess, I don't know how big it was, but I had some contribution. But what was funny, when I went to vote, elderly white woman came up to me and she was like, man, you're Jasiri X. I just love your news show. And somebody was a friend of mine was emailing to her, and I kind of looked at my wife. My wife was like, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, see, recognize This Week with Jasiri X got an impact. So, it definitely was kind of surreal, a surreal moment.
Right.
Brother Tshombe, do you have another question?
Actually, I didn't have another structured question, but I was just sitting there vibing in the energy, man.
Well, I'd like to ask one. Considering everything that's been going on in the political structure lately, do you, Jasiri, have political affiliations, and what would you consider yourself? I mean,
it's interesting because, like, Pittsburgh is a city that's very much, it's like run from a democratic machine. So it's almost like if you're not a registered Democrat per se, you really don't have that much of a say, because normally if you just win the Democratic primary in Pittsburgh, then you already won. There's no real strong, just a Democratic city. But, I would definitely consider myself an independent, and I would consider myself a person that, understands politics in its place, where understanding that it's not the end-all, be-all, cure-all of all of our ills and problems, that it's a tool. But, I wasn't, I was happy to see brother President-elect Barack Obama win, but I knew that wasn't the end of the work I had to do. Right? In my community, that all of a sudden, like, we're just going to come outside and, everything was going to change and everything was going to be great. So I think that definitely, and then when you see and hear about, all of the corruption and different things that exist, it's certainly something that really needs to be reshaped and reformed. But, so I guess I would consider myself more so independent politically,
An independent. Well, that leads me into a next short question, and probably a lead-in that I would need to say. First, I have noticed that prior to the election, just like a year ago, everybody that I was dealing with, as far as, in the artist community, was really on this revolution tip. You've been hearing it for so long. It's revolution, we need to change. This system is inherently corrupt, blah, 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 blah. And after, really Barack hit his pinnacle, everybody suddenly wanted to become councilmen and mayors and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that was like an overnight change. I mean, artists like, for instance, affiliates of yours, like New York Oil, incredibly talented artists who are so outspoken about the corruption that's going on in this system, they are one of the few that I see now who are still saying and doing what they were doing previously. But most of them kind of flipped the script. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that, I think it has a place. I think, I have a close friend of mine who, is a part of our group, one of the founding members of our group, One Hood. His name's Kahari Mosley. He's a national director for the League of Young Voters. And so I think there's a place for especially, conscious-minded people and reform-minded people to be politicians, to become in political office. But, if you don't have the ability to mobilize and organize the people, you're not going to have the success, if you get in office. And what happens, so I think that's good in a sense, because I think that the type of person that runs for office has to change. And I think what has taken place previously is that people have run for office that have had aspirations of their own fame or their own pocket, but not really the desire to really help improve people's lives or improve the community, or really be about public service. But I think there also has to be those individuals like myself, like NY Oil, that don't have political aspirations. Therefore, we can speak truth to power in a very strong way, because you also need that part of it, to really create the change that you need. You need, it's like, I guess, in the NBA, you need an outside game, but you need an inside game too. And if you can, play the inside and outside, you can win the championship,
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. Tshombe, are you there? I
heard somebody beep out.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard the ping. I think we lost him for a second. Well, let me move on to another question, man. Considering what you're doing, the vehicle that you're using, I understand that you are using this as a tool to reach our children. Because as we talked before, the overall goal really is to influence the youth of today so that they are our adults of tomorrow, and you have had some influence on shaping that, what they will become. Right. What would you consider a success for you?
Man, well, I mean, I think what I'm doing right now is already a success. I mean, to reach, the amount of people that I'm able to reach on a weekly basis, and, some of the messages, I received a message recently from a sister who said that, she watched it and she showed it to her son who's 14, and that he was, telling her, okay, stop it right there, and he wanted to read all of the things that were on there, and then they went and researched some of the stuff that I talked about and did further research about it because it sparked his interest to cause him to, to say, well, what is that? What is he talking about? What's going on? And so to me, when I get a message like that and messages that I've gotten from people who've really been affected by it, that's a success for me, So I really feel like I've had a really great deal of success. Would I like to see it on, cable TV, weekly, getting millions of views? Of course. But, I think that what I've been able to do in such a short period of time has been extremely successful, and I thank God for it.
I would definitely not deny that at all. I agree with you. You are very successful. But from what you're saying at this point is that, let's say, next year you are syndicated on 7 or 8 different cable
Oh, yeah,
stations.
that'd be nice.
News stations. That would just be like a blessing in addition to the success you've already
absolutely
achieved.
Absolutely. And, as long, and, because, and that's the difficulty about, I would want to do that. I would desire to do that as long as I was given the ability to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And, sometimes when you make those type of deals, you lose the ability to speak how you want to speak, where I might want to talk about what's going on in Gaza, and they might say, well, no, we don't necessarily want to hear that, and so that's always, when I was, it's funny, after the Gina 6 song hit, and because it hit so big, and I kind of got contacted by, several different labels, and I went to Atlanta to do a show, and I was able to, it was the weekend of the BET Awards, actually, when T.I. got arrested, and Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan spoke to a gathering of artists that were down there. This was the day after the BET Awards, and he just talked about how, as artists, a lot of times we want to be famous so much, we want to be known so much that we really sell our talent on the cheap. And then we put it in the hands of people that then kind of manipulate it or change it, or and now all of a sudden you're a different artist than you once were, and you basically sell out for the fame and fortune, and it really caused me at that time to really think about what it is I wanted to do, and really to say at that time, you know what, I'd rather be independent, and I'd rather, even though it's going to be harder to put the CD together, to put it out on my own, to do something on my own, that the reward will be that I get to really express myself in the way that I want to. And so now, with the success of this week with Jasiri X, and I'm able to I guess you would say, come to the table with a track record to say, look, it's obvious people want to hear this type of music, because if you deal with me, this is the type of music that I'm going to make, and this is the type of impact that I want to have.
Well, I am definitely looking forward to hearing a lot more from you. And just for our listening audience's sake, so they, if they want to hear more from you, they can always go to JasiriX.com and make sure you get on his friends list at MySpace and at IC Color as well. And if
you can also. I was going to say also YouTube.com/JasiriX. That'll take you right to the videos.
There you go. YouTube.com/JasiriX will take you right to the videos. And you can always find them at PrismaticDreams.com as well. And if you want to hear some of his songs, outside of the videos, we have that playing on PD Radio. Again, at PrismaticDreams.com, PRYSMATIC Dreams.com. Brother Tshombe, are you back?
I'm back.
I know you've been sitting down there writing down this question, right?
No, we've been having these blackouts here on the island, so drop power, and I'm on one of these technology phones that requires
Brother
a plug-in.
Tshombe, let them know who you are and where you're at.
Okay. All right. Again, I'm Tshombe. I'm in Hawaii, and I do a show on a Storm Network, which I founded to promote positivism and to educate the minds of the people in our community, just much like all of the foot soldiers out here, like yourself, Jasiri X.
Yes,
and you can find us at www.spokentruthshow.ning.com. We're also on the Ning Network. And we just pretty much promote positivism. And in fact, I was just talking to a sister this morning about it, some of the stuff she was looking at initiating. But I look at life as not a single event. I think it starts with a lot of initiatives, and a lot of times in our community as African Americans, I tend to think that we pin everything on one individual, kind of like Obama. We expect him to be our great black hope, but it actually requires all of our inputs. So that's why I really, really like to put effort behind brothers like yourself, who at times can feel like, oh, I'm out here by myself, and I hope that somebody else can join in to help out. I believe that life is about a bunch of initiatives in the right direction.
True. And, whenever you want to bring me out to Hawaii to do a show, brother, I'm not going to turn you down.
Well, I think there's a line because I promised Max and his wife that I got to get them out here. So
okay. Well, put me second in line then, brother.
Okay, because I'm sure Tribal Rain is right now in the background like, we're first. So, but that's pretty much what we do. We promote positivism. So that's what it is.
Cool.
Brother Jasiri, I'd like to ask you one quick question and then go into a break where people can hear a little something. But you recently sent us a couple of tracks, Soldier and The Box.
Yeah.
Which of those two is particularly your favorite and why?
Oh, man. I'll probably say Soldier, just because it's a more personal song, and it really is. Soldier really started off as a spoken word piece. The first two verses I wrote as a spoken word piece, and then when I found that beat and saw how it kind of fit, I wrote the third verse. But it was really it started out about me, and then it kind of went into being about the city of Pittsburgh and kind of the struggles of our people in our community. So that's one that is I guess you would say straight from the heart. It's a true story about myself, and it's just interesting how when you wrote, I wrote it about my own personal experiences, and I had a friend of mine who's an author who wrote a book called Wake Up Young Black Males, Life is What You Make It, and he did a DVD and he featured that song, and when he told me why, he said, man, that song is about my life. And I'm like, man, that's interesting that, I put it out there, very personal myself, and that, other people have gone through similar experiences and circumstances. So I would say that's that's probably my favorite song on the CD.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, from Brother Jasiri X, you are about to hear Soldier. Okay, we're going to cut out just that little bit of section right here where I'm talking right now, my brother, and we'll insert the song later and back to the show. Brother Tshombe.
Yes.
How you doing today, Brother Tshombe?
Well, what I like,
I know you sitting back there with a pencil and paper, man.
Oh, man, you know me. I'm always learning, man. I turn every opportunity into a learning moment. And, in fact, just this dialogue alone has changed a lot of things that I've been thinking about a couple of days over the promotion of spoken word, because that's the other thing. That's one of my biggest missions, is pushing spoken word artists and preserving the art form of spoken word. And that goes along with what some of the things that you're doing with putting out the news, and that's one of the things I'm trying to change the mindset of how people understand spoken word to be, because spoken word is kind of like moving along the same track that hip-hop did without the cultivation.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer that if you don't cultivate it, kind of like a child who doesn't know its history, if you don't cultivate it, it will get lost. It will be an art form that is lost. Right. And then it'll basically have to go underground to preserve its provenance.
Right.
So one of the things you just spoke on about being independent, which I'm a firm believer of being an independent artist, because I don't believe in selling my creativity out for the sake of getting my name out there.
Right.
A lot of people are afraid of the fact that if I don't get signed, because I talk to artists every day about getting, about what they're doing. It's like, well, if I don't get signed, I'm sitting on they sit on their talent. I've literally heard some awesome people, and I'm like, okay, so when you put out an album, or when you do, or I'm waiting to get signed.
Yes.
Is what you're doing, and is what anybody listening to the show who does what you do, or is looking to do, or might be inspired to do, because I'm a firm believer in also of starting little fires. I think this dialogue right today is going to start some fires and a whole bunch of other Jasiri X's around.
Yes, yes.
Is it the sole purpose, is part of the sole purpose of trying to get signed?
No.